Lesson 13 for September 21 through 27, A Community of Servants, read by Dr. Percy Harold. Friday, September 27. The work which the disciples did, we also are to do, writes Ellen White in the Ministry of Healing, page 104 and 106. Every Christian is to be a missionary. In sympathy and compassion we are to minister to those in need of help, seeking with unselfish earnestness to lighten the woes of suffering humanity. We are to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and comfort the suffering and afflicted. We are to minister to the despairing and to inspire hope in the hopeless. The love of Christ, manifested in unselfish ministry, will be more effective in reforming the evildoer than will the sword or the court of justice. Often the heart that hardens under reproof will melt under the love of Christ. End of quote. And from the same author, The Life Sketches of Ellen White, page 473, slavery, the caste system, unjust racial prejudices, the oppression of the poor, the neglect of the unfortunate, these all are set forth as unchristian and a serious menace to the well-being of the human race, and as evils which the Church of Christ is appointed by her Lord to overthrow. And that's the General Conference President A.G. Daniels speaking of the work of Ellen G. White at her funeral. And that brings us to our discussion questions for this week, and there are 4. There are many people, groups and organisations seeking to relieve need in the world. What unique strengths, insights and resources can the Seventh-day Adventist Church bring to this task? 2. Can you remember a time you felt encouraged and supported by your church community? Learning from that experience, how can you extend that same encouragement to others? 3. As well as the support of a church community, what other things can help you avoid becoming weary in doing good? 4. What are some of the justice and poverty projects and initiatives you are aware of that the Seventh-day Adventist Church around the world is currently supporting? How might you be able to contribute to this aspect of the Church's work? And to summarize this week's lesson, yes, as Christians, we are called to minister to the needs of others, especially others who are hurting, suffering, and oppressed. And though we have our individual responsibilities in this area, as a community focused on ministering to others, we can be much more effective working together as a church family. Inside Story. Our mission story this week is titled Driving Passengers to Christ, and it's by Andrew McChesney of Adventist Mission. Byung-jin Oh, a taxi driver in rural South Korea, had never led anyone to Christ after years in church, and he decided to change that. Byung-jin saw many repeat customers and began to build relationships. He collected passengers' cell phone numbers and, with his wife, took them out to eat and visited them at home. One Sabbath afternoon, Byung-jin and his wife, Mi Yun-yeon, visited the home of a passenger named Mr. Choi. They chatted for a while, and Byung-jin invited the man out to dinner. As they left the house, Mr. Choi pointed to a small church nearby and said that he once had worshipped there. Byung-jin saw an opportunity to share his faith. "We have a very beautiful church," he said. "Would you like to visit it?" Mr. Choi agreed to visit the church in the town of Chuncheon. Byung-jin drove to a local restaurant. Its Adventist owner expressed delight that Mr. Choi planned to attend church and declared that the meal of buckwheat noodles was on the house. The kindness surprised Mr. Choi and strengthened his resolve to visit the church. After that first Sabbath, Mr. Choi returned to the church every week and was baptized. Byung-jin had won his first soul for Christ, and he didn't intend to stop. One day he saw an elderly man emerge from a house as he drove past. He had seen the man before and stopped to greet him. "I was about to call for a taxi," the man said. Byung-jin quickly offered to take the man to his destination. As he drove, he learned that the man was named Mr. Park and decided to visit him at home that evening. Byung-jin and his wife showed up with several small gifts. Mr. Park ushered them into the living room and introduced them to his wife, Chunja Ann. Byun-Yen learned that the wife had a problem. She couldn't attend Sunday services at her church because she worked 6 days a week with only Saturdays off. "We go to church on Saturday," Byun-Yen said. "Why don't you come with us?" Soon she was baptized. In 2 years, Byun-Yen Pictured Left has led 3 people to Christ. He is convinced that if he, a 58-year-old taxi driver, can do it, so can anyone. "Reduce your work so you can do God's work," he said. "Simplify your life and then fill it with the joy of meeting souls." And that brings us to the end of this quarter's lessons. Once again, I'll still be at the South Queensland camp this weekend. It lasts the whole week. So remember LMMSA, and you can view online many of the meetings there, and I might even be introducing some of them to you on camera. But in the meantime, we're looking forward to next quarter's lessons. Have a great Sabbath. You have been listening to a reading of the Adult Sabbath School Bible Study Guide by Dr. Percy Harold from Queensland, Australia. This service is brought to you by Hope Channel, the Sabbath School Department, and Christian Services for the Blind. Remember, God is always faithful.